The American Adoption Congress 13th International Conference, April 11th to the 14th, 1991 in Garden Grove, California. This is program number D-151, tape number 61.
Well, welcome to this brief showing of Sealed Records, Sealed Lives. I'm Sheila Gans, and I'm the filmmaker, producer, director. This is Tony Maines and Maureen Pierre-Oliver. I just want to thank you for coming here after an agonizing 3 days on the workshops. Just to introduce Tony. Tony Maines is a adoptive mother of 3 children and 3 very open adoptions. She also has led a PACER, Post-Adoption Center for Education and Research support group for the past 5 years, a triad meeting, monthly triad meetings. And she's an RN at San Francisco General Trauma Center. She's one of my advisors for the film and has been almost since I started making it. Maureen Pierre-Oliver is an adoptee and working on her doctoral thesis on search and reunions that have not gone the way people expected them to. And Maureen is going to be doing the study guide for the film. When the film is completed, there will also be some kind of material on the history of adoption in the United States and some core issues, and for teachers and school classes and even adoption support groups, some kind of guideline for discussion after viewing the film. I am a birth mother, and 2.5, almost 3 years ago, I found my daughter when she was 19, which was just a couple of months after I was inspired to make this film. So this all has been going on for the past 3 years. We have some contact. She knows that I'm making the film and wishes me well for doing that. Besides being a birth mother, I'm an artist, and I have been an artist most of my life. I began as a painter and then got into sculpture, and in graduate school, went into graduate school in the sculpture department, and this was in 1983, right around when the abortion issue was really up under fire like it is now, and I felt like rather than just making works of art, pretty things to make, that I had to get just more political about what I was doing, and came to write a play about my experience as a birth mother called Pretend It Didn't Happen, and I produced and directed it as my master's thesis at San Francisco State in 1984, and then rewrote it in the Julian Theater in San Francisco, did a stage reading of it a year later, and it's still something that I want to rewrite and redo. Then, just from being in support groups and hearing so many different stories from birth parents, adoptees, and adoptive parents, I decided that I would really like to do some kind of performance piece to tell the whole story. I went through a whole progression of emotional stuff when I wrote my play, and I then felt like I was ready to get into other people's stories. And in fact, had contacted a performance artist and had an idea for doing this piece in the Bay Area, and this was after I graduated from San Francisco State. I went on to City College to take more theater classes. At the time that I did my play, I had never taken a class in theater writing or acting or directing or anything. I took those classes after I started doing this. I said, oh, there's more I have to learn here. It really came out of as a process as an artist of wanting to tell my story and being a poet, basically, and not writing dialogue or anything else. So anyway, in the course of taking history of film classes at City College in San Francisco, in the second semester, we were looking at documentary films, and I saw The Times of Harvey Milk. I don't know how many of you have seen this film, and it has inspired many people, and it inspired me. it was really an inspirational moment, so much so that I went home and called my teacher, who by that time I was friends with, and left a message on her machine saying, Celia, you know, I'm totally inspired, I'm going to make a film. And at the same time, I was teaching sculpture in extended education at San Francisco State, and as faculty had access to all this video equipment. And it was towards the end of the semester, so I had like 10 days to put everything together. And with connections, people that I knew in different triad groups, contacted 10 birth parents, adoptees, adoptive parents, and this is how I met Tony. And in 3 days, I interviewed 10 people and 1 child in the Bay Area. First day, I didn't even know how to keep the camera on. Second day, I learned how to put it on the tripod, and I was off. And that was in April of 1988, and this is April now, so this is 3 years since I've been working on that. And I, as alumni at State, had access to video editing equipment in the library, which is really great, which is how I've been able to do all of this stuff. You call up and you make an appointment, you go in. They know me very well. And so in order to apply for grants, I got a non-profit status with the Film Arts Foundation, which has sponsored a lot of independent projects, mostly documentaries, but personal works also. And they are extremely supportive organization, and they do workshops on all phases of filmmaking, from grant writing to actually producing works, and have put me in touch with a lot of really good people. So what I've been able to do in the past 3 years is I did get a grant from the Skaggs Foundation, and the summer that I was inspired to make this film was the summer the American Adoption Congress was doing their march in Washington, D.C., the first big march. And I just felt like I just had to be there to film this thing, because it was really a historic moment. And I met a woman who does all kinds of fundraising for mostly on women's issues, and she helped me raise about $3,000 or so to just get it off the ground so that I could go to Washington, D.C. and film this. And in the process of just talking to her about it, she said, well, if you're going to film a march, then you should really talk to Frances Reed. She's a cinematographer in the Bay Area, and she knows what to do to film marches. So I called up Frances, and she said, oh, sure, you know, I'd be happy to talk to you. And that's one thing, people have been really supportive to just call someone up, and it's not like that typical Hollywood, you think filmmakers are just backbiting type of people. In documentary film world, everybody's very supportive of each other, and that's really great to give advice. And so I met with Frances. I went to her home and talked to her, and she gave me all kinds of really good stuff about how you shoot one way and all of this stuff. And towards the end of stuff, she mentioned that she had worked on the Times of Harvey Milk. And so I said, oh, that's the film that inspired me to do this film. Will you be my cinematographer? And she said, well, I'll think about it. And then she also mentioned that she was good friends with Debbie Hoffman, who was the editor, the co-editor with Rob Epstein, who's the producer of the film. So she gave me Debbie's number, and I called her that night, and she was really excited about the film and what it would do. And so she said yes right away, and then Frances said yes, and I took Frances with me to Washington, D.C. to film the march, and she was just great. It was like 95 degrees humidity, 90 degrees, you know, and she was like cool as a cucumber. And I really learned a lot from her, and she just did a great job. So I ended up, you know, kind of by accident with my dream film crew, and which has really lent a lot of good stuff to my application, because while I'm a first-time filmmaker, I have this, I don't know if you know, the Times of Harvey Milk won Academy Award for Best Documentary. And then both Debbie and Frances also worked on Common Threads, which also won an Academy Award. So I have some really highly skilled people to help me make this film. Along the way, besides writing grant proposals, I have interviewed more people in the triad and have been perfecting this 10-minute sample clip that you need when you apply for grant proposals. To show somewhat the treatment of how you're going to treat the issue, and you know, the possible people who might be in the film. The clip that I'm going to show you might not necessarily be the people who are going to be in the final film, because I'm still in the process of finding more people to interview and selecting the best stories, which is where the advisors come in. One of the reasons why I decided I really wanted an advisory council is because up until the time that I made the film, everything that I've done as an artist has been out of my own personal experience. And I'm a birth mother, but I'm not an adoptee and I'm not an adoptive parent, and I really want input from them to what are the key issues for them. And this is actually my main purpose today for having this workshop, besides telling you all that I'm doing this, is that if you notice there are feedback sheets, because I would like to know what it is for you. In a couple of sentences, Sealed Records, Sealed Lives will examine the impact of surrender, separation, and adoption on birth parents, adoptees, and adoptive parents, and their relatives in the United States, which really comes out to about 100 million people. I mean, there's about roughly 6 million adoptees, which adds up to 12 million birth parents, 12 million adoptive parents, 48 million birth and adoptive grandparents, 36 million siblings, aunts, uncles, and cousins. And that is a lot of people. I really can't go anywhere, you know, on a job or anything where somebody is not part of the triad. And while I'm, you know, still in the development stages of the film, I mean, an example was this guy coming up to us right here and asking. I have already been able to help people in some way with their searches, just by starting to put it out there. The film itself, even though it's not done, is starting to have a life of its own to help people in some form with what's happening with them in their life. Not only do I want to show the impact, but I'm also hoping that people will realize that surrender, separation, adoption is not something that should be taken lightly. So much of the pamphlets that I see at the conference have to do with adoption and, you know, as, you know, the quote, loving option. And I think one of the things that I really want to show in the film is that this is something that should be done really as a last resort, that people are impacted for their whole lives. And I'm hoping that when legislators see this, they will see the need for openness, legal openness, and then it will validate people's experiences so that they can talk about it themselves. One of the stories that you hear a lot of is birth parents, birth mothers, especially who have been found and can't really relate to their child and being found, or there are adoptees who are found and can't relate to what their birth parents' experiences was. And I'm really hoping that this, by showing all of the experiences in one media project, that this mingling, that people will have a better understanding of what the other side is going through, and open up more communication, and people will feel more compassionate towards the other person. You know, birth parents who are closed will see the real need that adoptees have, and hopefully feel less threatened. My feeling is that one of the reasons why they're still close about it is because that's the way it was for them at the time of surrender. And I feel that once things are talked about much more in the media, I mean, if you see something on TV, then you can say, well, gee, that makes it more okay somehow. It's like seeing something in print, it validates it. And you know, maybe somebody could say, well, they don't know how they're going to tell a friend that this happened to them, but if they see a show on TV, then they can say to their friend, well, you remember when you saw this person and what she was talking about? Well, me too. And that would give them a better base to start with, and probably most of their friends would not throw the rotten eggs at them like they think that it's going to happen anyway, which is the way I felt when I first came up with my story and presented it to class when I was doing the film, when I was making the play, rather. So what I would really like from you is maybe you could tell me some things that you liked about a clip, keeping in mind that it is not going to be the final film. And just to get your ideas on what you feel are core issues. I mean, this is going to be probably an hour documentary film, and I really want to do a lot in an hour. And so I also have to be selective because we can really get carried away. So whatever, you know, as Maureen said in her workshop, that we are all experts in this because we have lived it. So whatever comments that you might have or that you want to write out on the sheets and send in to me, I'd really appreciate it. It all counts. So why don't we run the clip, and then we can discuss things from there.
Should we want the lights out?
Well, maybe it's harder if people, do people want the lights on?
Yeah. Yeah, you should.
It's glaring.
So, I got some raisins.
When I signed the papers, I didn't think anything about signing them. They made a big point of telling me that I was doing this and it was irrevocable and I could never find her and the records would be sealed. They made a big point. I wasn't allowed to sign final papers till 2 weeks after she was born. There was a mandatory waiting period. They didn't give me any idea of any kind of societal supports. I do not know if there was AFDC. Welfare was only a vague word to me. I didn't know anybody. I never had known anybody who'd been on welfare. There wasn't any help for me to try to figure out how I might keep her. Anyway, they had made a big point about how this was irrevocable and forever, and I couldn't get in touch with her. There wasn't any suggestion I could write letters to some anonymous post office box, and when she was 18 she might get them. Nothing like that. They told me that it was not necessary for me to use my real name or her father's real name on her birth certificate. They encouraged me to use aliases. I did not.
Sealed Records, Sealed Lives is about the 30 million people in the United States today whose lives are permanently affected by surrender, separation, and adoption. These include birth parents who surrender their children for adoption.
It's something, no matter how much therapy I do, no matter how much I talk with Tom, no matter how much I go to meetings, I just can't seem to find any way to really understand it and to accept it. I just don't understand why there wasn't some support. It would take just the littlest bit of support from, I believe, social workers and the minister and the priest for us to keep our child. Our families were totally capable, of helping us, and we've talked about it, and we really believe that we could have made it. In my situation, I kind of idyllic in some ways, because I'm back with the birth father, and we have, another son here, Jesse, that is a full brother to the son that we relinquished. But I don't think that there is a happy ending.
Adoptees, children who grow up with non-relatives.
Places generational continuity, sense of generational continuity. This is something that I don't have. It's like the sense of being in time, the sense of being part of the human race, the sense of being part of a continuum that started with Adam and Eve, and is going to go on until whenever the kingdom comes. Right? I don't feel that at all. I feel completely severed from any sense of roots. I feel completely uprooted. I feel like I'm living in this strange and separated slice of time, I'm having a hard time joining up my history and what comes before. family before, and having a sense of moving beyond today into the future.
And adoptive parents who raise children they did not conceive or give birth to.
Initially, I wanted, I thought, well, I don't want to have anything to do with this woman, like, give me my kid, thank you very much,
Yeah.
goodbye.
Yeah.
But, then I thought, well, then we talked initially about the kind of contact we wanted, and we talked about sending pictures and writing letters and all that, but then the more I attended PACER meetings, the more I talked to other birth mothers and other triad members, the more contact I had with the birth mother, the less threatened I felt. I'm not saying that when he's 18 and wants to get a hold of her, or even if he's continuing to see her, that at some point I won't feel threatened. But I think that I'm going to try to be as open and answer all of his questions that he may have all along. Meaning he'll want to leave me and go live with her.
Also affected are over 70 million birth and adoptive grandparents, siblings, aunts, uncles, and cousins of all adoptees. In the 1920s, the Child Welfare League of America recommended that all adoption records be permanently sealed to protect birth parents and adoptees from the stigma of illegitimate birth and to ensure that adoptive parents' rights to the child would not be usurped. By the 1940s, all states had passed closed adoption record laws.
The message that I was given was that it was very selfish to even think about that I should consider his future and place him in the hands of people that wanted a child and were capable of caring for a child. Well, if you can't care for your own child, I mean, what good are you? So my self-esteem took a pretty hard blow. I remember on the day that Tom was born, that I went to the fair, the fairgrounds in Lincoln, and was passing out cigars. And people thought that was very strange, but it was really the only way that I could express that, I was proud to be a father, and I knew that it was my only chance to participate in fatherhood was that incident.
After 50 years of living with the closed adoption record system, the American Adoption Congress, an international adoption reform organization, led an historic march in 1989 from New York City to Washington, D.C. to open these records. Kate Berg, president of the American Adoption Congress and an adoptee, gave the keynote address.
We're having to speak out today because we thought we could demonstrate wide open records is a necessity if we hear people's stories. Well, I want to tell you a story that's not my own, but it's one I think we all need to think about when we get real tired or when society keeps putting that door in front of us. I helped a gentleman from Illinois in his search. He was a twin, and he didn't find he was adopted until he was much older. This man has been searching when I met him for 15 years. We did his search, and we found his birth mother's name was Mary Brown. And Mary Brown was a little woman who never married. She was Catholic. And she had written letters that we got copies of to the agency, saying, I want to know my sons. If I had been able to receive mail at the end of mother's home, my aunt had written me and said I could have kept my words. And here's $10 to help pay for my care. These boys kept searching, and when we found Mary Brown, she'd been dead 2 years. She had been searching for her boys, for pendants. When they had petitioned the court, she had been petitioning the court to the same time. But some kind person somewhere, because of the law, would not open her records.
I have a great fear my daughter will find me inadequate and say, oh God, why couldn't I have found this perfect mother? This isn't who I wanted to be my mother. But maybe not. I don't know. I'm trying not to project too much of that. I certainly know that it's going to be another emotional process, which I presume will be a growth process, but I'm not sure that one always has to grow by going through the world's worst pain. And I feel that I will find her. And recently I've been feeling, I'm not particularly mystical, but I've been feeling what I can only call vibes about this being the time to find her. Maybe she's looking for me. Maybe I'm a grandmother. I think about that a lot. She's 28. I could easily be a grandmother. But there's something that's telling me that this is the time to do it. And I don't know whether I hatched that out or whether there really are some vibes coming to me from somewhere. And rights are a question of who has a right to do what is a long and political and interesting and personal one, and I just know I have to try this. Maybe I'll get her name and address and find out that, somehow decide that I don't want to interrupt her life. Most adoptees I've talked to have said yes, they would like to see their mother. Some of them are waiting for their mother to find them, and I've been waiting for her to find me, thinking that was her right, but maybe she's out there saying, why hasn't my mom looked for me? And I guess if she's open to hearing it, I want her to know that she has been with me every day of my life.
This is sample that I put together so far. Comments?
So far, so good.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, really. Well, I have 90 minutes from the march, although I think that story that Kate Brooks tells obviously is probably, although I have a couple of really heavy-duty interviews too, but that story is really great.
You might want to add in that piece too, I just told you.
Yes.
Because Jim is in our group and the twin that found his birth.
Oh, really? Oh.
And Mary Brown is an adoptee.
Mary Brown is an adoptee. Can you
So that she
stand?
never had any background any further than her.
Oh, that's interesting. God. Let me just tell you a couple of technical things about what you just saw. First of all, the reason why the faces were so whited out like that is because I showed this to some people, actually it was Phil Martz Foundation, and they have a new monitor just like this, but they were having problems with it. And it was solarizing, it whites things out, and it did it to my tape. That's my master.
Oh my God. Also, on the last one of the show, same thing.
Oh, so then it's this machine that does this.
It's Sony.
Yeah, it's exactly this machine.
It's got higher resolution.
It has higher resolution. I mean, this is why I'm making my film in 16 millimeter film. People say, well, why don't you do it in video? It'd be cheaper. Number one, video is not cheaper. And number two, the quality, there's absolutely no comparison. I mean, I'm an oil painter originally. And, you know, visual quality means a lot to me. And
I've done video.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, my broadcast news journalism classes, and yeah, the quality on
I mean, there's
not very good.
no comparison. Now, the March footage is 16 millimeter, and usually what's done when you have the funds is you can have it professionally transferred to half-inch VHS. And I don't have the money to do that right now, so what we did was we put it on the flatbed, which is where you do your editing. With the film, you know, the strips and everything just go through this thing, and it's called the flatbed. And then we just shot it on a video camera. That's why you hear the squeaking, is because you can hear the wheels going around. I mean, it's the rawest way to transfer it. So
I can't, like, who are you trying to get this to? I mean, television or?
Yeah, PBS, definitely. I already have, and I have had, and they were extremely quick in responding when I asked them if they'd be interested with my grant applications, you want letters of support from community, and of course Kate Burke wrote a great letter of support, and other, Alma, and I approached KQED, which is, San Francisco PBS, and they wrote a letter right away saying that they would be interested. Of course, they have to see the final film, but, as a letter of support to show funders that this program would definitely be something that would want to be PBS broadcast.
Adoptive parents in it?
Yes, well, there are adoptive parents in there now.
Just meant, a little more of each, you're going to do a lot more.
Oh, yeah, well, see, this is like a 10-minute sample. The film will be an hour documentary. If not, unless it grows to a 90-minute film, which my feeling is that I have enough, probably will have enough material to.
No miniseries.
Yeah, well, that is really my idea, but I really want to show all three parts of the triad in one film, which I still haven't seen to my satisfaction on the way it could really go to really get to the core issues and just show, how complicated the whole thing is in everybody's life. The impact of surrender, separation, and adoption on birth parents, adoptees, and adoptive parents, and their relatives in the United States. This is like my one-sentence description of what I want to do.
Good luck.
Thank you. I don't know, what else could I tell people about, or do you...
How many people have you interviewed?
I've interviewed probably about 25 people. Usually the process in making a documentary film is that you do pre-interviews on videotape, because people just telling their story or writing the story is not the same thing as them sitting in front of a camera and telling their story. At least 100 people. And what I want to do, having gone through a search myself, which was ended up to be a very agonizing year, being lied to by the agency, and just everything and I've been a support person for other people going through the searches, so I would like to show an adoptee and a birth parent doing their searches, unrelated people, just to show kind of from both angles what that search means to people, and interweave those stories, and then also interview people who have already gone through the process or maybe don't want to go through the process, birth parents, adoptees, and adoptive parents, and then show historical stuff also, really starting from the orphan trains and how we didn't always have closed records, and just how the whole social and moral stuff that's laid on everybody on the triad and how that affects how we feel about ourselves, how it affects, maybe why we got into adoption in the first place. I mean, from my own personal experience, 18 years later, and talking to my mother about it, she said, well, even if you had been married and he had left you, it would have been all right. And it's like, wow, if I had known that, I would have bought a ring, and faked it. So that's, this society and the religious stuff, the Judeo-Christian whole ethic, and patriarchy, really. I mean, it's a woman isn't legitimate until a man claims her and gives her his name and marries her. A child is not legitimate until a man claims that child and gives them his name. And I feel like this would not be the way it is if this was a matriarchal society. Women would count, mothers would count, and it would be a totally different ballgame.
I'm curious about your response about what you felt was missing out of the film clip. Did anybody have any reaction to things missing?
Definitely.
Yeah.
What?
It's covering, as a filmmaker myself, okay, for example, taking this whole topic on adoption. I want to make a film about concept. So you've kept it and you've got it very, very broad. And that, I think, it's good in some ways, but too broad spreads the butter too thin.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe you have to become more specific and cover fewer areas or fewer aspects and get more in depth, because that's my understanding is, and what I've seen and what is the lack, is that there isn't the depth.
Mhm.
People are always getting, and that's the thing about even the title of being adopted or being an adoptive parent, it's always been a title, but what's
Mhm.
behind the title,
Mhm.
and that, and I'll speak to you alone about it further, but that's the meaning
So are there
of
certain
it.
things, particular issues that you would like to see treated in depth?
I think in
Just off the top of your
core-
head.
In the core, you were saying, you know, at what point, okay, you're going historical and you're doing present because people's situation and a documentary, and you've got to look in the film as that it's a representation of the immediate.
Mhm.
And you want to use it, for the third thing is that you want to use it to open up discussions.
Mhm.
So you have to be more definite on what discussions you want to open up.
Mhm.
What I found at the whole, even just conference, is there's a lot of people telling personal stories, and that's great. But what in the totality will be able to be accomplished from the film? So all I can say is I could talk to you further on specifics.
Mhm.
It takes time, but there's.
I think personal stories are important.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm not saying they're not.
Well, it's,
but
the issue is
that's-
via the personal story.
You want to hit their heart. If you don't hit
Yes.
their heart, you're never going to get to their
That's
head.
true.
Certainly,
That's
you've got to
true.
hit their hearts, but you've got those personal stories, but you've got to have them leading into at least a direction to open up. You see, everything works in that you've got
Mhm.
this mass, you bring it together,
Mhm.
you hit a point, and then it'll go out to the audience
Mhm.
and a film, and the audience has to respond and then open up to issues. Or to
And then
talk.
if you're doing this title, Sealed Records, Sealed Lives, then it has to be a lot on the adoptive parents, and they're not getting the medical information they need from these records. It needs to be about the damage that's been done to
Yes.
birth parents,
Mhm.
the damage that's been done to adoptees, and
Mhm.
the damage that's been done to all sides. You cannot include all the extraneous
Mhm.
uncles, aunts, other people to make it work. And there's been a lot of things on the orphan trains and the historical part of it, and that doesn't need to be discussed in this film. If you're going to do Sealed Records, Sealed Lives, has to be on
Yeah.
the damage that's been done by the records being sealed, and that's it. And the stories will tell that, show that, and then it needs to be discussed to the point on why the records need to be open, why it's important that that information be there so that this damage does not continue.
You can find
And
siblings.
how to do it, and giving them the
I think that's
way
why
to
it
do
needs to come from the triad
Mhm.
too.
Just
Because-
the triad.
Because everyone, no matter what part of the triad they are, has been, I heard the word Holocaust used in the last
It's a good one.
seminar. You know, they have been a victim of a Holocaust aspect. And
Definitely.
if other people don't know that,
Mm-mm.
they just don't know. It's like the mother that, the adoptive mother.
Mhm.
You know, I thought she, you know, her first comment
Mhm.
was how it is.
Yeah, yes. That's why she's there, because that's
And
how it is. I mean, that's
how
not
many-
all adopted, but
how
that,
many women-
generally
how many
speaking.
women will care enough or
Hmm.
make that extra effort after she's got what she
Mhm,
wants
mhm,
to take care of
mhm.
those needs. And it was really gratifying to see how she turned that around.
Mhm,
Or,
mhm.
but then it makes you wonder, how long does that take?
Mhm.
How much education is involved? And how many times multiplied does that need to happen?
Mhm.
I just say my memory is failing with my age, but I really did forget the adoptive parent to do. That's how little it impressed me.
Oh.
Plus, I just want to say one more thing about if you come across any siblings yet that have met not knowing they were adopted.
Uh-huh.
And that's always very impressive too.
Yes.
That's one of the pitfalls of sealed records.
Yes, it
People that
is.
have fallen in love that don't know
This
that
is
they
true.
were
This
genetically
is true.
connected.
That's good. good one.
Mixed race,
Uh-huh.
lack of it, right there.
Well, Paul is.
No, Paul is.
The
Well,
the
okay,
man
that's
is
fine, but
mixed race.
you're also doing a certain social class. And, I mean, that's a big generalization there, but that's basically middle class. You've not, I don't seem to even remember, the lower income bracket range, which there's a lot more adoption in that kind of family too. So,
There's
and-
not a lot of non-intra-family adoption in lower socioeconomic classes. You don't find the same
Amount.
type of middle-class
No.
adoption.
No, but this is the thing, is it is a sort of a middle class
It may be.
issue.
It may be.
But there was the other POV as well.
Sure, sure.
You were also talking before about your mother said, well, if you only would have been married, you
Mhm.
could have left him. I was in a maternity home and it was in a black area because that was a very safe place. They put this maternity home in a black area because none of these white girls would have been recognized anywhere in this
Oh.
black area. And there was 32 girls and only 8 of them were black. And one black girl happened to live a block away from there. Her
Oh,
mother
God.
lived a block away from the maternity home. But what she did was go home and visit daily or weekly, but she told everybody that her husband was in the Korean War. And then she killed him off. You know, she never had a husband. She just killed him off after the war.
Right.
She kept her baby, brought it home, and they had seen this girl coming back and forth pregnant. She was supposed to have this husband that was away in the war.
But her mother helped her out to do that.
Yeah.
She.
And in a black family, I'm usually in a black family, they didn't care.
Yeah,
That's what
right.
they did.
Yeah.
This one
Yeah,
had the
right.
status that they felt that was
Yes,
an issue.
yes, yes. Well, I do feel that probably the majority of birth mothers in this country are middle-class white women.
Are or aren't?
Are.
I don't
Definitely.
believe so.
No?
Because if they had the funds, they
Mhm.
would not have done it.
Mhm.
If they had a way.
Not true.
I disagree.
I still say middle class.
If I had, if they had a
Right,
way.
that's-
Well,
but that was
lower
past
to middle
history,
class,
think
but I
that
mean-
was some years back.
Right.
That's what I
Right,
think. I
I
think
think
that
so,
they're
too.
making choices. I think that I'm an adoptive mother, and I think that women are making choices based on the information they're given.
Which is none.
Well, which
Right.
is much more now, because certainly
Yes.
when I talk to birth mothers, I don't have any investment in the women that I talk to, but I want to make sure that they understand they have all kinds of options.
Right.
The choice is definitely their own, but they have all of this realm of options.
Yeah, but the reason why I said that is not,
Currently.
Yeah,
Right.
right, I agree.
But,
I think that's very new. I don't think it's
Yeah.
that old.
You know something, I really think they sometimes think that the choice is their own, and it really
oh,
isn't.
and I
And,
believe that also.
When I do birth mother groups, I'll have a birth mother that'll come to me and say, oh, it was definitely my decision, nobody coerced me into this. And I know I did the right thing,
Right.
and when you get into therapy with them for a while, you realize that what they're really saying is, I know deep down there was this message in my family that Peggy's a good
Right.
girl,
And
this
she
is
won't
what
do it.
she has to do.
Well, this is
I
what I
agree- I
wanted
agree
to say.
with
It's
you.
not so much, I wasn't really talking about middle class as an economic thing, is that is where these religious morals are, this is the milieu, this is why I want to show historical stuff, because this doesn't happen in a vacuum. You know, it's like our belief system says, you know, I mean, what is this unwed mother and illegitimacy? You know, I mean, I think it's a totally outrageous idea that a person should be illegitimate. I mean, that's, to me, it's ridiculous. I mean, are you more or less of a valid of a human being, you know, on this planet than another because of these moral ideas, you know, which all goes back to that whole Judeo-Christian ethic of, you know, what's legitimate and who's not legitimate.
Want to go back for a second to this issue
Yes.
of why the adoptive mother didn't come through?
Sure.
In the same way that the
Yeah.
others did.
Maybe it's my
The-
senility, I don't know.
No, because I
No.
totally agree with you.
Okay.
And I think it may be partially a technical question, because she was not focused on head-on like Paul and the birth mothers were.
She's in the context
She's
of
in the
group.
context of a
Yes.
group, and she's also sideways. She's also sideways.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and she's also, yeah, and she's also not, you know, wearing anything that, she just looks in a sense, after the first couple of seconds, I went, oh, maybe this is good because she looks so ordinary. You know, she just looks,
Lost her.
yeah,
Maybe
but she did get lost.
Flags sticking out.
Yeah, right.
This is the end of side A. Please turn your tape over and continue on side B.